Hello and welcome to a new video. In 2020 I felt compelled to make a video about the state of Joomla, and since it's now a new year and it's almost 10 months later, I felt like it was time for an update. Unfortunately, in the past 10 months not a lot has changed. Not for the better anyway. Joomla has never been less of a force on the web than today. Now, some people may agree and point to the 1% of installations that they still have, but that is not a number to boast about. I'm going to open something that I said earlier this week. I'm going to quote myself on Twitter, and that was also about the 1%. If a product has lost a lot of market share, sees no growth, and hasn't released a new version in years, and it's just a super niche topic on social media, and doesn't look like it will recover from any on the above, I think it's fair to say that it's dead. Now, that's a strong statement, and people will say that they still power 1% of the websites. But let's be honest, that number has been dwindling, and we can't even be sure that that's a true number. And it would be easy to blame the decline of those numbers to Juggernaut WordPress, which now claims to host 40% of the websites, or SaaS products. But in the end, the blame of what I just said, that Joomla is virtually dead, lies entirely within Joomla themselves. But I'll explain that later, just what I mean by is Joomla dead. Now, one of the events or non-events in 2021 has been that Joomla has yet again failed to launch Joomla 4. And at this point, I don't even know if they have a launch date anymore. And to be honest, I'm not following anymore. And if I'm being really honest, it is probably for the better, because nothing about Joomla 4 is really an improvement for end users. They are claiming that there are some big new additions like workflow, but in the end, I think that the average Joomla builder won't care much for these features. And if anything, the launch of Joomla 4 might be the final nail in the coffin for a lot of people that don't want to make a migration to a version of Joomla that doesn't add any value. Personally, myself, I have tried to install Joomla 4 quite a few times, and the result was always the same. I always end up uninstalling it in favor of Joomla 3.9, which can do the same, but better in my opinion. Now, Joomla has unfortunately peaked somewhere near 2015. That's a claim that most people make. And while Joomla 3.9 is still a perfectly fine product, as a whole, Joomla died, but not the product Joomla, that's just stagnant, but the project died. We can point fingers all we want, but the cause of the death of the Joomla project is obviously the result of a lack of vision and leadership. And don't let the organigram of both OSM and Joomla fool you. They have a bunch of team leads and even more committees and special teams, but in the end, that entire infrastructure, that bureaucracy, has proven to be a massive drag for the project and for the progress of the end product. I don't want to point blame at anyone's direction, but at some point you may even start to wonder if those people in charge even care about the end product, or otherwise we wouldn't have ended up in the place where they are in. I still catch myself saying we, but I should probably say them, because my involvement has been very small this year. One of the problems with Joomla is that the ratio of lines of text that are written in endless email chains and debates and secret chat rooms to the ratio of new code written must be close to 1,000,000,000 to 1 now, which means that for every 1,000,000,000 lines of nonsense, there's like 1 line of code written, which may or may not be deleted in the next release. Now, from a technical point of view, I would hesitate to call Joomla dead, because it's still a stable and great product, but I feel like the project itself is dead, and one of my concerns is that the jump to Joomla 4 seems kind of pointless, and I feel like many people might decide that this is the final step toward choosing another project if they have to start updating, because there is no real appeal, no real motivation to upgrade to Joomla 4. People will argue with me and say that Joomla is still better than WordPress, and I can't disagree because WordPress is a complete mess. But what people are losing track of is that WordPress has been moving more and more towards another SaaS project. WordPress.com is becoming really dominant in that ecosystem. And you have to wonder how much PHP and open source there still is in WordPress.com. It may be a completely different project for all we know. I honestly believe that at this point, the only conclusion we can make is that the project Joomla itself is virtually dead, while Joomla the CMS is still a good product on its own. But the problem with that product is that there is no leadership and no real vision, and it doesn't seem like Joomla is going to go anywhere in the near future. I mean, there is this sort of roadmap for Joomla 4, which is like tweaking 2 features which have always been awful for people. I mean, how many people using Joomla actually use the Media Manager and just use the GCE Media Manager instead? I often catch myself surprised when I don't have GCE installed and realize that Joomla's Media Manager looks different than I remembered. But anyway, at this point, what we have is a product and nobody that is really taking care of it. And over the past weekend, I have said that in an ideal world, someone would step up and fork Joomla at this point and nudge it in a direction with more of a vision where they look at end users and take on WordPress, because I believe that Joomla still has the potential to take on WordPress in many different areas, but there is just no general vision, no marketing, no appeal. It feels like they have sort of given up and just accept their fate, or maybe the people working there are just happy to sit on the endless committees. There are still a few people that are doing a lot of work, but it's not enough to drag the project out of this situation that they ended up in years ago. However, if I'm being honest, a fork of Joomla is probably never going to happen, and I feel that Joomla 4 isn't going to change anything or isn't going to benefit Joomla as a whole. And the question is if Joomla 4 is even going to come out this year. So for next year, I could probably make life for myself easy and just upload the same video, and nothing will probably have changed. In the past, I would have hoped that wasn't the case, but we have to be realistic here and look at the facts. In 5 years, they have failed to. In 5 years, they have failed to launch a new version of Joomla 4, and the market and the end users' interest and the interest of the web builders is just gone. Everybody has moved on to WordPress, not because that's a better option, but just because Joomla feels that, and perception matters. And Joomla may juggle around with percentages and claims that they're the better project, but if you can't convince people that you are superior to a bunch of spaghetti code, a glorified blog that needs 10 plugins to do something basic, then you have lost the battle. It's as simple as that. To summarize this video, this will probably be the last video that I make in this genre. I don't see myself making another similar video in 2022 unless something big happens. But to summarize, Joomla the CMS is still a good CMS if you don't mind that it's attached to a dead project. Would I still use Joomla? Yes, I would probably end up installing Joomla 3.9 and staying away from Joomla 4 because I don't see the reason why I should migrate. I mean, there are some plugins available already and a lot of things can be migrated, but I just can't get over the fact that they decided to change the entire backend for who knows what reason, so that even experienced Joomla users get lost. But that's just my personal opinion. Maybe some people like the changes they've made. Well, great for them. But anyway, to summarize the bold statement that I made, I honestly believe that the project Joomla, that it's beyond repair, and that there is still a good product out there, but that something has to happen with that project, maybe outside of the realm of Joomla, to save it for future generations. But is that going to happen? I have no idea. Big disclaimer, I am not associated with Joomla. I don't develop for Joomla. I am not in one of the million committees or teams or secret chat groups. I'm just some guy who has been following Joomla for years, and I wish I could give you a better or more optimistic opinion, but it is what it is. I've seen it myself with my own website and projects. If you have to choose between Joomla or WordPress, it really depends on what the customer wants, and the majority chooses WordPress now, so why should I, disagree with the customer when my alternative is a project they have probably never heard of at this point. Anyway, that was it for this video. We look forward to seeing you in next videos. If you have any opinions, leave them in the comments. If you want to try to convince me that Joomla has a bright future, go ahead, type away, go insane on social media, or threaten to incorporate my blog into the CMS and run it on 50% on the servers. I don't care, you do you. That's it for this video. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.